Well, hello there, and welcome to the living room of the dollhouse for another reading from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Used Elfers for March 21st, the day of clarity. And here at the top of the page is a visual representational image of the day of clarity. We have what appears to be, the binding of the book doesn't fight me too much. Oh, it's a ring with a sphere suspended in the middle of it by a little ribbon and bow there. All right, does that speak to the day of clarity? I don't know. Maybe to some folks. To me, I can't make heads or tails. All right, it's rather unclear, if you like. That said, a lot of times visual representational images are rather enigmatic, so this is kind of part and parcel for the game here. That said, not altogether all too important when in the scheme of things, it's somebody's birthday. So if your birthday's March 21st, what's important around here? Wishing you a happy birthday. That said, a lot of times random folks like to drop in, or people who want to celebrate the birthday, and so if that's why you're here, I just want to say hello, welcome, and I hope you enjoy yourself. Now, something I like to do before I dive in with the redirect, and that is roll some dice. That's right, this is the Diecast birthday broadcast, so I like to live up to the namesake. But if you've been here before and you know the scheme of things, well, you can just advance forward in the chapters there if you're not interested in hearing as much. Or if it's your birthday, you just want to get into the redirect. That said, I'll be here rolling dice because I do so, more importantly, for synchronicity's sake. And here I rolled us, if I can grab the dice, a 1 and a 4 for a 5. Now, what is synchronicity, you're probably wondering? Well, my friends, as I hear it told, the universe or the higher powers that be will oftentimes put things in our path to help us manifest our goals or realize our aspirations. And so this is a little bit of a experiment to try and manifest that particular dynamic there, if you like. Because a lot of times as we get out in the world, we often got the blinders on to what's going on around us. So we may not necessarily lend a lot of credence to the things that cross our path, especially if there are those that the universe is throwing in front of you there specifically. So this is, like I said, a little bit of an exercise to hopefully help us identify such things. Now, how do we do that? Well, we need some kind of mutually agreed upon sign between us and the universe. That's right, your daily numbers. Now, you don't have to go with what I rolled for you. The intention is there, but it's probably advisable you get your own set of dice if this is something you want to try out, and head on out into the, into some place that maybe is near dear to your heart or some place you haven't explored before. And then, like I said, get those blinders off. You also want to ascribe, say, directional values to number sets as well as time limits with which to go in those directions. So you're essentially letting the universe take the wheel and drive and take you where it deems is necessary, all right? So that said, like I said, when you get out there, get those blinders off and start taking in everything around you like a sponge, because you never know. Outside of your numbers presenting in your life, the day might start to take on a little bit of a theme, all right? Let's take the ring, the brass ring, if you like, and the sphere suspended in the middle of it. You might start to see things that are on par with that particular imagery, be it in a literal fashion, say sculptures that are out there in the environment, or drawings of as much, just things that line up for a ring around a sphere, all right? I think you get the idea. That said, the theme can be anything. I'm just giving you an example. So say this first directional value time limit, hey, maybe in fact you cross some kind of a statue or a sculpture. You just take note of such things, the ring in the sphere. All right, there you go, on the right path. And maybe at the end of this particular time value, hey, maybe you look up and I don't know, maybe you're on Old 5th Street or 14th Avenue. Who's to say? All right, again, I'll just take such things as a sign you're on the right path. Maybe you roll yourself another time value, also direction to go in, and maybe at the end of this one, you find yourself in front of a store, once again, with your numbers and the address. It can present as things like that. Or maybe you don't see anything, all right? Just take it in stride. Make sure you're taking a step back to see what's in your environment. Hey, maybe right as you're about to roll your next directional value time limit, somebody steps in front of you, you look at your dice, say it's the number 5 again, you look up, and hey, maybe they're wearing a jersey with the number 5 on it. You know what? I would take that to mean that's your white rabbit to follow in this particular circumstance, all right? So give them a buffer, let them decide where they want to go, and then, just follow them for however many minutes your dice tells you. Maybe as you're getting on, this person notices you're following them. Hey, you got to be kind of sly so it doesn't seem like you're stalking folks. You don't want to spook the white rabbit if you like, but if they confront you, you know what? Just tell them what you're doing. Hey, these are my dice. I'm out here on my birthday trying to shake things up, see what the universe has in store for me. Show them this video, and they're apt to tell you you're crazy, or at least the situation's crazy. I'm sure you're apt to agree, and maybe they're going to say, well, that's crazy too, this synchronicity thing. But what's even crazier is it's my birthday too. Oh, that's right. That probably sounds a little harebrained, but you know what? Sometimes reality is stranger than fiction. And you know what? Maybe all is good at this point. Maybe they're apt to join you on this journey. And if that's the case, that's great. Because as I hear it told, the more people who are focused on the same thing, you're apt to beget greater results. So get out there, start stacking up coincidences if you like, or synchronicities as I call them. I think they're kind of interchangeable. And see, taste, touch, smell, intuit just a little bit of the magic like that. Hey, I think you're apt to agree it was worth the venture. That said, that's synchronicity in a nutshell. Let's get on with the read. That's why you're here. Your month is March. Your day is the 21st. Your sign is, what do we got here? 29 degrees Pisces to 1 degree Aries of the Pisces-Aries cusp. And your quality and element is Cardinal fire. All right, March 21st, the day of clarity. March 21 is a pivotal day of the year, traditionally marking the first day of spring and the vernal equinox, on which day and night are of equal length. Its characteristics must always be seen as primary in nature. In keeping with their symbolic heritage, March 21 people tend to have forthright and essential personalities, rather than complex or ultra-sensitive ones. And they are often misunderstood by others, who find them unwilling or unable to fit into the ordinary social mold. And this is because they live life purely on their own terms, an attitude that extends into even the simplest of everyday actions, tasks, and responsibilities. And although they may have a touch of the dreamer about them, March 21 people usually have a practical side that outweighs their fanciful tendencies. And they may have a genius for setting up organizations and structures, but somehow things never turn out quite as they expect. Those same structures, particularly when they are human ones, seem to invariably fall apart. On the good side, however, sometimes of a lasting value will usually remain. March 21 people are often devoid of overly fiery, aggressive characteristics, preferring to be alone with those who do not understand them. And because their confidence is a quiet assurance, they may in fact strike others as passive types. Actually, it is simply that they do not find it necessary to justify their behavior at all. If others don't appreciate it, well, then that's just too bad for them, it says with an exclamation point. The physical and the aesthetic aspects of life are equally important to March 21 people. Thus, dancing and other physical, graceful activities are perfect for expressing this balance. And those born on this day can be curiously nonverbal, expecting others to sense their thoughts and feelings without explanation. And since they are born leaders, they may in fact find it possible to express their wishes silently or with very few words. March 21 people are courageous and stick to their guns when they believe they are right, even if it demands a fight. And though they often give the impression of being curiously uninvolved or unconcerned with what's going on, their anger, once roused, can be terrible. And they are at once childlike and child-oriented. If as children they themselves suffered neglect, they will be devoted to giving their children the best. And spiritual outlets are very important to March 21 people, whether they be found in conventional religion, devotion, and service, or esoteric, mythical pursuits. And those seeking a higher state of consciousness should, however, beware of drugs of any type, as the March 21 aura is one of extreme purity. And it is important that those born on this day be left free to practice their unusual, even eccentric forms of self-expression without interference. At worst, they will be relatively harmless to those around them, and at best prove to be highly inspiring. Well, all right. This was a pretty interesting, if not fascinating, birthday breakdown with the different elements they baked into it. Kind of saying that your importance is pretty, baked in there on account of the fact it's the first day of the astrological year. So I would say it was a little bit hyper-focused within certain respects and kind of branched out from there. They did round it out a little bit. I like to make mention of that because sometimes the greater part of the book is pretty well-rounded birthday readings. But here nor there, I found it pretty interesting. And I can't say that it really lines up with any other particular birthdays off the top of my mind. So like I said, pretty interesting. That said, I like to provide a little bit of a commentary on everything we just read, kind of make associations with the past few days, maybe the period at large, and also just the book at large, as well as things I found of note. So let's dive into it here, all right? March 21, the day of clarity. You're said to have forthright and essential personalities versus complex or ultra-sensitive personalities, thanks to a primary nature associated with rebirth. The spring season and the first day of the astrological year. The reading claims you are often misunderstood by others who can't see you fitting into ordinary social paradigms. And apparently there's a good reason for this perception. You live life on your own terms, and this attitude, it pervades every aspect of your personality. Having a touch of the dreamer about you, any illusions or childlike wonder you possess may in fact largely be overshadowed by practical behavior. And there may be a somewhat complex astrological reason this dynamic is present that we'll get to here shortly. But from this unique synthesis of traits, you're said to have a genius for setting up organizations and structures that provide a lasting value, even if they fail or fall apart, apparently. Now, how that's realized, it may be seemingly shrouded in mystery, even for you, I'm assuming. But you just might have you just might be setting a foundation for others who are then able to reach figurative or literal success. So in some specific way, it may be your shoulders that people are standing on in the future. Kind of a nice idea, even if you don't get to see it, all right? The way I interpret the reading anyhow, that's kind of the thing I imagine. That said, you may be overly fiery, aggressive types who prefer to be alone rather than surrounded by those who don't understand you. I would say that makes a lot of sense. You want to be surrounded by a bunch of folks who don't understand you, right? But I love how you're also said to have a quiet confidence, all right, that others interpret as passivity and that manifests simply because you have no need to justify yourself. All right, quiet confidence. I would say that's worth its weight in spherical gold there if we're going by the visual representational image. So that kind of comportment or behavior, that takes bearing and self-discipline with untold numbers of people otherwise, especially if they have aggressive natures. And this is kind of baked into the formula here, it sounds like, but you're able to rise above it. So I would say that's commendable and quite the standout quality. All right, you have the reading continues on by conveying qualities of physical grace, innate leadership, courage of conviction, openness to spiritual outlets, being in touch with your inner child, endowed with curiosity. The list just goes on, and an idea of someone who would certainly fit the bill of an iceberg, I would say. Say your true magnitude is maybe buried beneath the surface, or floating more aptly. Well, who's to say? Maybe there's an iceberg buried. All right, so in any event, that's what I had to say about the breakdown. Let's move on to your numbers and your planets. Get into some astrology and numerology, all right? Those born on the 21st of the month are ruled by the number 3, as 2 + 1 = 3, and by the expansive planet Jupiter. And those born on March 21 must beware of flying off the handle in fits of temper due to a Jupiter-Mars influence, Mars being the ruler of Aries. They are proud and ambitious, although their ambition may only extend to their immediate daily sphere. And if leaders, they seek positions of authority, but once in place, manage to avoid quarrels, preferring their authority to be unquestioned, rather. I was going to say understood, but unquestioned. Many people ruled by the number 3, often women, it says, do not seek positions of power in the world, but unquestionably rule the roost at home, exercising their power through their mate. Very interesting. A little bit of manipulation, it sounds like. Who's to say? That said, let's dive right back into the notes here. This was a pretty highly personalized numbers and planets, all things being equal. That said, I think considering the fact you're kind of on a cusp period, they can't really copy-paste any particular previous dynamics into the mix because, hey, there's too many elements influencing each other. That said, I might be burning down everything I have to say. Let's dive into the notes once again here. The number 3 in the expansive planet Jupiter for warnings of flying off the handle, or not to fly off the handle, rather, in your drive toward the highest position in your sphere. So this might be that Mars influence, that flying off the handle thing. The god of war-like energies there, with aggressive natures usually. Jupiter also comes with positive, constructive approaches to solving problems, an expansive philosophical outlook, and jovial, lucky qualities, as it turns out, as mentioned elsewhere in the book. Mars, with its god of war-like aggression, adventureness, and highly motivated to succeed energy, may just take some of the joy out of that jovial, I would assume, and replace it with that seeming quiet seriousness, perhaps. But with Neptune's subtle dreams and illusions influence in the mix, considering its co-cusp rulership with Mars and its traits for a concern for a higher ideal, also romanticism and fantasy, well, that may serve to paint the day in a whole host of complex hues and contrasting typical dynamics, which I would argue one can't help but see as you approach and get into the breakdown. It's all throughout the whole thing there. Hence, that's why I said earlier that there might be a reason that there's a touch of the dreamer, all right? That Neptune, those Neptune folks, they typically have their head up in the clouds with their concerns on the higher ideals and the illusions and such. Now, I'd say it's just a subtle power there because it's a cusp. We're coming out of Neptune. You got all these other planets coming in the mix, but it's still there. And I would say it's a big part of a lot of the characteristics baked into the personality that they went over. Days also are said to lend to propagating more childlike and curious natures rather than overly aggressive. So again, Neptune maybe is dampening a little bit of Mars's power in that respect, and that may explain the realization of that dynamic. Also within Mars and Neptune with the co-cusp rulership there, it's said to impart psychic powers elsewhere in the book. This didn't come up for you here in the reading, but who's to say? I don't know. So if you've got a highly intuitive nature, hey, that might be what you owe it to in no small part. In any event, that's what I had to say about your numbers and your planets. Let's move on to your tarot. That's right, one of the more eclectic of the New Age metaphysical ideologies, but it's here in the book, so let's see what it has to say. Oftentimes, we can make some connotations with the breakdown, even though these cards are dealt out in a very specific way. They don't just randomly pick one here. So let's see if we can make it fit. All right, the 21st card of the major arcana is the World, showing a goddess running with energy-giving rods in her hands. And she surmounts the world and displays the truth. And she has unlimited power, and this card symbolizes all that is attainable on the earthly plane. And although reward and integrity is assured, traditionally the card carries the warnings of an insurmountable external obstacle, as well as setbacks, distraction, and self-pity. Well, all right, some things to look out for. I think this was largely a copy-paste job here, but see if we can make it fit. Sometimes they'll button it with a little something specific to the person or telling you that this serves as an example to strive to, but none of that today. So here we go. The World. A once a month card, as it turns out. Some of these other cards get repeat mentions and they come up repeatedly, but not for you. You get the World here. So a goddess who surmounts the world to display her truth with her energy-giving rods, building a foundation upon which others may build, ostensibly, all right? Even if said foundations were long forgotten and then abandoned before they were built upon. Perhaps. Maybe a little bit of that theme they were talking about, how People come in to build upon your shoulders, your previous accomplishments. Even if said foundations of, like I said, okay, so for representations of unlimited power and all that is attainable, as well as an assurance of reward and integrity. Hey, I felt like that was conveyed in the breakdown for sure, all right? Which I'd also argue is more than true if you only possessed a mere helping of the gifts that you're said to have access to, all right? That said, there will always be setbacks and obstacles, I would say. And if distraction or self-pity take hold, your influence is sure to be dulled. So it's a rather apt card in that respect, I would argue, especially if your quiet integrity is maintained. So, we're apt to get into these struggles and everything, so don't let them set you back, all right? So, in any event, I think it was a pretty apt card. Sometimes I've seen things speak much more to the breakdown, but all told, hey, it has all the earmarks of lining up rather nicely. So, that said, that's been your tarot. Let's move on to your health. All right, here we go. March 21 people can be quite solitary, and being left alone for long periods of time is very important to their physical as well as mental health. Receiving love is, of course, essential, but only on their terms and according to their own requirements. They do not enjoy smothering displays of affection, nor will they tolerate being nursed or coddled. And if they fall sick, they will often cure themselves, sometimes using the most particular methods. They can live on quite uncomplicated diets, which would bore many others. And it is not a highly varied menu which they demand, but rather the stability of a well-prepared, consistently healthy food. Dancing is the perfect example of an exercise that is relaxed and can provide enjoyment for those born on March 21. Well, all right, this is again, highly personalized health entry, very unique, a lot of elements to it I haven't seen come up before. That said, it was also kind of sparse if we compare it to the typical boilerplate. So let's get into it here. Long periods of solitary reserve said to befit your mental and your physical states. Rare, but not unheard of for the Pisces period specifically, which you're still influenced by, even though we got the Aries here as your zodiac sign. Where did I miss my spot here? But sometimes setbacks for the Aries newborn who needs to go out and discover the world. Or I'm sorry, but somewhat backs rather that the Aries newborn needs to get out and discover the world. But receiving love is also important. This doesn't always come up, surprisingly. You would think that'd get mentioned for everybody. Not the case, all right? I would say it's a novel inclusion for Pisces, too. But understandable for a newborn also, too, if you think about it in those terms. Though you must be a rather stubborn babe in that respect if you like your space to that end, right? So very interesting, I would say. Stable, well-prepared meals for your diet. A lot of times they'll drill down on very specific foods. Not the case. They said you like boring foods. Hey, you know what? Whatever works, right? And maybe you've got it down pat on how to min-max your time. This only takes me 10 minutes to prepare. I get all the nourishment I need out of it. Anything else is a waste of my time. Perhaps, who's to say? But dancing is a recommendation for exercise, highly specific. A lot of the times they'll drill down on, say, the quality of the exercise, say moderate or vigorous. And a lot of Mars days get vigorous exercise on account of, I would assume, excising that god of war-like energy. But you got Neptune in the mix, you got Jupiter as an influence. I would say it's probably just moderate, all things being equal. Neptune has been shown to curb a lot of those aggressive tendencies, so you probably don't need to get out there and be vigorous about it. Just need to get that relaxed enjoyment in the bargain there. And also maybe some grace. That said, for Pisces, the body area is the lymphatic system, so maybe try to be easy with the dairy. That's right, because it's said to build up mucus, and that's not good for the lymphatics. I know it's not a Pisces zodiac period, but you still get a little bit of influence there, so it might not hurt. Maybe try it out. That said, that's been your health. Let's move on to some advice. That's right. Might get a little redundant here, but they like to emphasize their points. Let's see what they have to say. Don't feel sorry for yourself, all right? Self-pity is poison. Be more flexible in your dealings with others and learn to live or rather, learn to forgive and forget. Try to be a bit more accommodating and tactful and make an effort to explain yourself better. Beware of undue pride and of arrogance. All right. A lot of earmarks of the Capricorn period with this advice, it turns out. Interestingly enough. All right. What did I have to say about what they had to say? Let's dive into it. Bear with me. My writing is tiny. I had to put it in a book here. So I might get a little bit more mumble mouth than usual. So they said, don't feel sorry for yourself. Self-pity is poison. This comes up quite a bit, interestingly. Rather common advice, but for you it lines up with with the tarot, and if you are as involved in advancing as it would seem. A likely hurdle when setbacks arise, so keep pressing forward. All right, use that quiet comportment that you've got there. Subdue the aggressiveness. I bet if you got frustrated, the aggressiveness will start to come out, or perhaps get that self-pity brewing a little bit. I can't do anything, blah blah blah. Hey, just keep pressing forward and keep that stuff in the rear view. I got the idea. You're pretty good at compartmentalizing things in those respects, at least on an outwardly appearance. Who knows what's going on inside the iceberg there? No telling. Any event, self-pity is poison. Just be mindful of it. We also have be flexible with others, forgive and forget. Fight that Mars aggression, I would say, which affects your practicality and your objectivity. All right, they said you have those things in no small fashion. So don't buck your strengths, I would say, by letting your aggression get the better of you. It's also a bad look if you're in a leadership position, I would say. People are apt to quit in that respect. They deal with it too much. So let the jovial, expansive Jupiter and the higher ideal and the ethereal Neptune guide the way, I would say, in those respects, when the aggressiveness starts to brew anyhow. What else do we have here? Try to be accommodating and tactful in effort to explain. This is a highly Capricorn type thing. They're just so hyper-focused on the job at hand that they might get out of the pocket with their employees or those underneath them. They also don't like to explain themselves or what's going on in their minds, all right? And if somebody's not putting out enough or to the same quality of endeavor as they are, and they might not be capable of as much and they're doing as much as they can, Capricorns have a tendency to not care about that kind of thing or take it into consideration. So I've always been saying, hey, you know what, crack the whip on those who are sandbagging it, but, show the empathy and sympathy for those who are doing their best, even if they can't rise to your level. So be mindful of that, I would say. Tactful, and also, people, they don't know what's going on in your mind. Also true with the Capricorn. So explain yourself, get them on the same page. It may seem like it's a real, time suck insofar as like I'm wasting my time having to explain this. But if they get on the same page with you, that time was probably pretty well spent. Otherwise, they'd be fumbling and jumbling around, not knowing what to do. And that could start to accrue in a much more grander fashion than the time you spent explaining things, obviously. So you get it. What else do we have here? Beware of undue pride and arrogance. All right. Once again, they're kind of drilling down on what I would say some Mars type stuff. All right. People probably know you have all the tools in your bag, also, and also the ability and the knowledge to use said tools. So I would say use that in a modest fashion. Maybe even teach folks how to do or build the skills that you have. If you start lording that reality over folks, you're apt to beget some antagonism there. People who are jealous, maybe, and that doesn't often work out for folks too well. At least those on the receiving end there. I would say modesty and also teaching folks how to kind of rise to your level, teaching them how to do it. It's going to help rue the day, I would say, and again, save time in the bargain. So teach others the skills, maybe free up some of your time, all right? And delegation is also a huge leadership skill, and it helps beget those greater results, all right? At least I hear. So don't forget about delegating, even though you probably want to take it on all yourself, like those Capricorns do. Very surprising there's so much like Capricorn type nature baked into this in no small part. But it is different. It is different, though I probably didn't make a case for as much. So, any event, that's been your advice. Let's turn to Your meditation. That's right. It's your birthday. You get a meditation. Something to think about if you like. Here we go. Let me get the book in front of me here. The simplest melodies are the hardest to play. Oh, very interesting, though I don't know what to make of it for you specifically. Once again, the simplest melodies are the hardest to play. Oh, I think I get it. I think I get it. That said, it's your birthday, your meditation. I'm not going to throw my interpretation on it and skew it one way or the other for you. It's just for you to think about, all right? Wouldn't do you a lot of good if I explained it to you and put my spin on it. So in any event, your meditation in a can, as it were. Let's move on to your strengths and your weaknesses. That's right. Let's hold up the objective mirror and see where you got the girth and maybe we otherwise a little more atrophy within the metaphor. That's right. Your strengths, you're courageous, you're self-expressive, okay, and you're direct. Interesting. I didn't really pick up on the self-expressive. Maybe I'm forgetting something. But that said, your weaknesses, oh, what could those be? Let's hold up that objective mirror once more. To flip it to the side that blows up your face. Maybe shows off the things you're otherwise the most superficially insecure about within the metaphor. That's right. You're misunderstood. Oh, I picked up on that. You're antisocial. Ooh, I think that's the first time this has popped up. And you're dictatorial. Oh, they didn't outright state that one, interestingly enough, but we kind of picked up on it in the advice there, I would say. That said, I often like to make the case that our strengths are going to help us overcome our weaknesses, all right? But I also like to make the case that our weaknesses can also be strengths, just depending on the situation and how we use them, all right? One day, impulsive came up as a strength. The very next day, it was a weakness. So it's kind of like, well, what's just a minute at a time, within the stars or whatever? How's it going to change that kind of dynamic? So I like to try to make a case that's just the situation or the individual and how it's handled. So let's see if I could do this here for you. I often like to try to make a case for my thesis there. You're courageous, self-expressive, and direct. How is that going to help us improve on our weaknesses? Courageous, you're going to rise to the occasion. Damn the torpedoes, whatever's got to get done. I'm rising to the occasion. So a lot of folks don't do that, all right? They don't have the courage to rise to the occasion. You're self-expressive. Well, how does that relate? You know what? I would say within your own personal dynamic, you can express the things that need to get done, and that might extend to having a clear idea as to how to do it. I get the idea in a more literal fashion that you're going out there and giving folks a good idea, but that kind of seems anti, kind of bucks the whole idea they gave us for your personal image there in the breakdown with the quietude and the confidence. But hey, who knows what kind of self-expression you give off with that quiet confidence. That might inspire untold numbers of people, who's to say. But I would also say if you're able to inspire folks, you might also be able to grab their assistance if you need it. You're probably not apt to ask for it. So when you do, they're going to jump at the opportunity to help. And I would say being self-expressive in that respect is a huge tool. All right? It's just the hammer it's that sledgehammer with just a little bit of weight. You just got to let it go and it does all the work for you. So if you never, express things to people and then one time you do, hey, you know what? This must mean something, I would say. It also says you're direct. Hey, you know what? You cut through everything, right to the point. Let's get to it. Some people, they meander around the point there, like I tend to do, all right? And some folks just want it now, all right? So it's a strength, I would say. And if you're direct, you're going to get right into this best approach to figure out your weaknesses and improve upon them. That said, how are your weaknesses, strengths? You're misunderstood. You know what? You got to kind of take a roundabout way of looking at these sometimes, I would say. If you're misunderstood, what can we learn from the things that we say, how people misinterpret it? You got to take that objective viewpoint and say, how is this affecting me? But just taking that opportunity to see and try to analyze where we're misstepping and how folks aren't able to process what we're trying to put down, hey, that gives us the opportunity to build, all right, and further improve upon how we're expressing ourselves, if you like. So I know it sounds like a total weakness, but no, it actually serves as an opportunity to continually build, all right? It's actually kind of your own tripping hazard, if you like. So you got to be mindful of it. And I would say it's while it's ultimately a weakness on its face, like it serves as a strength, and an impediment that you have to consistently overcome. It helps you build up the muscle of being aware, present, all of that, I would say. So, antisocial, how's that a strength? Well, hey, you know what? You can shut people down with no uncertain terms, all right? Pretty easily, probably. You just turn on the quietude, all right? And you can get people to go away. You know, there's sometimes those folks that we need to have leave our sphere. And a lot of times, a lot of folks aren't courageous enough to do what they need to do to get them to leave, all right? I can see why they say it's a weakness, if you like, because you're off-putting to folks maybe in some respects, and we want to try to have folks come in, especially a leader who can't be approached. Not the best thing for the production of the unit there, if you like, all right, or for keeping a well-oiled machine. People may not relay the information they need to when it's important information. So, but again, I think if you use it as a tool when you do need to get rid of people, surprisingly enough. That said, you're dictatorial. How can that be a strength? Well, like I said, sometimes there's folks who need the whip crack, all right? I was in the Marine Corps for 6 years, and it blew my mind. I was someone who preferred to be asked rather than told, and I would actually give more effort if I was asked and treated like an individual. The second you're told to do something, it's just like you don't want to do it. And so you don't give nearly as, at least in my dynamic. Then there's other folks who, if you asked them, they figured it wasn't important because you didn't tell them to do it. So they would just sandbag it, all right? So they need that whip crack. They need to be yelled at. I don't know. Like I said, it goes right over my head. Seems unconventional. Doesn't necessarily make sense. But if you're dictatorial, hey, you can pull that whip out when you need to. The metaphorical one, right? Not the literal. Unless it's a bull we're talking about here, maybe. And you're not what do you call it, humanitarian. I don't know. But that said, you know what? There's folks who can't rise to that occasion and say the things they need to say or be very pointed in their directions and their leadership style. So it's a huge strength, I would say, because they can't rise to that occasion. That said, there's other folks who just drill down on the dictatorial. They can't take the soft touch or the humanitarian approach, if you like. And so I would say that's a weakness too. You got to be able to identify your subordinates, how they best function, and treat them accordingly to get the best output out of them. I would say that's the earmarks of a good leader. So just understand the situation, I think is what I'm trying to say. That's huge. And don't get dragged down into the negatives about it. Less than you need it to maybe get somebody to quit, I would say. All right? Kind of using that antisocial element there, if you like. So, in any event, not the strongest case that I've ever made, but also not the weakest. So I think you get the idea with all that. Your strengths can help you overcome your weaknesses, and your weaknesses can become strengths. That said, I wouldn't improve upon your weaknesses altogether, all right? Because they're part of who you are, all right? So keep them in the mix in those small part. That said, that's been your strengths and weaknesses. Let's move on to those born on this day. I mucked up the transition here. Let's move on to those born on this day. That's better. All right, so when we get into those born on this day, something I like to do is use this as an opportunity to try to drum up some inspiration. And why do I say that? Well, it's cool to see who shares your company, what lottery you drew in those respects, but hey, let's put it forward towards something productive, all right? And what's the productive angle? Well, figuring out our passions, all right? I think it's important that we're chasing after something fulfilling in life, because all too often I meet folks asking what they do, and more importantly, if they like it. A lot of times they don't. I think it's just because they may have got out of school and a job they needed to make ends meet. But at the root of it, it's not something they actually want to do, all right? But I think it makes all the difference if you're doing something that you want to do, that you're doing backflips out of bed to start getting your days going with, all right? So let's see if we can't derive some inspiration from those born on this day and help you start stirring up the fires of inspiration if that's something lacking in your life there. That said, if you got your passions already figured out, well, then hat I'm not wearing's off to you. Let's just see who shares your company, all right? All right, let's start off strong here with Johann Sebastian Bach, all right? The German master composer, organist, and the paragon of Baroque music. An individual who everybody else stands on the shoulders of, all right? I would argue. All right. We also have Peter Brook, a British stage and film director, responsible for The Beggar's Opera. Modest Mussorgsky, probably butchering that one, a Russian national composer, and an opera he's responsible for is Boris Godunov, and died at the age of 42, it says. So, how many more composers are we going to see in the mix here? Let's get into it. J.B.J. Fourier, a French mathematician, probably saying that wrong. Benito Pablo Juarez, a Mexican statesman. Ingrid Christensen, with a K.R. Christensen, Norwegian runner, and a New York Marathon two-time Boston Marathon winner. Oh, a little fast. I'm surprised it's not a Mercury day for that individual. Also, the world record holder for women's 5,000, 10,000 meter run, and the marathon. We have Matthew Broderick, the film actor. We also have Flores Ziegfeld, the theater producer. Arrington Siena de Silva, a Brazilian auto racer, and second all-time in Grand Prix wins during the publishing of the book. Anyhow, could have changed in between times here. We also have Walter Gilbert, a U.S. molecular biologist, and a Nobel Prize for DNA sequencing to read genetic code. We also have Paul Weiss, a biologist, says embryo growth, cell development, and regeneration. John D. Rockefeller III, financier and a philanthropist. Robert the Bruce, the Scottish warrior king. Son House, the blues singer and guitarist. And we also have Gary Giddens, a jazz critic, columnist, and a writer. We also have Roger Hodgson, a rock singer and songwriter, and in the group Supertramp, Jerry Keelian, perhaps, a Czech-Dutch choreographer and a dancer. Excuse me. Oh, there's some of that dancing there. For the grace and exercise. We also have Phyllis McGinley, a poet and light verse, it says. Gary Oldman, the British film actor. Timothy Dalton, the Welsh film actor, and starred as James Bond in 007. So we had a whole myriad of different talents today. Pretty interesting. But only the two composers, as it turned out, and only one dancer. Interesting. That said, I know it's a big ask, tall order to take inspiration from other people's accomplishments, if you like. But hey, maybe me just putting the bug in your ear about trying to figure out our passions is going to help you go the extra little bit of length to start getting there. Because like I said, if there's anything I can wish for somebody on their birthday, it's that they're chasing after a passion, getting something fulfilling out of life. That said, I butchered untold numbers of names, so let's make up for it on my side of things. It's not done in malice, it's just hooked on phonics. Doesn't often work for me as a tool to pronounce the foreign names there, or words at large, as you noticed with the read. That said, that essentially rounds out your birthday reading, except to say your season is spring, your sign, or the zodiac sign if you like, is Aries. Of the Pisces Aries cusp, one of the final days of as much, and your quality and element is Cardinal fire. And all this information has videos elsewhere on the channel associated with it. So if you're interested in figuring out what all of that means, just go have a look on the channel there. That said, this has been March 21st, the day of clarity. No real clarity with regard to the visual representational image, but hey, a lot of times that doesn't happen. That said, this has been The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Used Elfers. I have a affiliate link for this particular book down at this tome, if you like, down in the description if you're interested in picking up your own copy and diving in further for yourself, so you don't have to sit through commentary and me wishing you a happy birthday and the like. That said, this thing makes an excellent coffee table book if you're ever in the market for something that needs, to crack the ice during parties and such. This is your quiet, serious in your quietude. Maybe you don't like to do that kind of thing. You know what? Let this be your crutch in those regards and do the lion's share of the lifting. And you know what? It's going to be a great way to get your party started. Everybody's going to remember. Or if you just have company over. That's how it came into my life, as it were, and it has been all the better since. That said, you get the idea. The book there having been relayed. I did leave a personal message for the birthday boys and girls, ladies and gents, underneath the affiliate link, so go check that out if you're interested. That said, I just want to thank you for the pleasure of your time. It was a privilege to celebrate your birthday with you. And for everybody else who joined us randomly, hey, I hope you enjoyed yourselves, and we see you for your birthday reading. Now, lest I forget before I take us out for the day here, your daily numbers. That's right. Get out there and let the universe, the high powers that be, show you their, excuse me, what they call the coughing here. Let them show you, let the universe show you it's with you on your path, all right? And you're apt to see why I bring it up if you start seeing the magic, all right? So I hope that for you too on your birthday. Get your hair blown back there if you like. But hey, once again, I just want to say, happy birthday, all right? So enjoy yourselves. Self-pity is poison. Once again, remember that. And you stand to be the foundation for others to build their church upon. so to speak. All right, so don't poo-poo that. I would say that's huge. That's huge. Let's get out there and be the iceberg. You had untold numbers of qualities. Sometimes even not even half as many come up for other folks. So first day of the year, take it as you can. There, I would say. All right. So once again, happy birthday. Take care of yourselves.